Once again, welcome to today's episode on Evelia's Corner. I am your girl, Eva Usen. With me today, I have Vahyala Kwaga.
How's it going?
Voice as powerful as the name, Vahyala Kwaga.
Three syllables.
What does it
That's
mean?
It's kind of a joke at this point. It means all things come from God. So unless you know me, you won't get the context of the joke.
It feels like an inside joke
Yes,
now.
exactly.
But I feel like by the end of this,
The viewers would laugh.
you guys will understand.
Yes.
By irony. So, one question before I move on. Are your kids going to answer Kwaga
Yes.
or Vahyala?
So I think I'll probably follow the tradition of my dad, who used the name of the clan,
Okay.
which is Kwaga. But like for the child's first name, I'm giving that honor to my dear wife.
Oh, if you followed the series, you would have seen Vahyala's wife, the amazing Topsy.
I would have loved to have been in the studio when you had that episode.
He was working behind the scenes. But yeah, so today is exclusively for Vahyala. So let me give you a backstory. Vahyala is, I will leave the rest of the introduction to him, but he is an amazing person. I think if there's one thing that we all know you for in our circle is that you're very empathetic. It just got me wondering, like, so who is Vahyala? Like, that's a thing that is missing in this generation. In a generation where everyone is acting idon, like there's flex in I don't care.
Yes.
I don't see people.
Yes.
There's big flex to that. How did you get to that point? How is Vahyala this person, and if that's all there is to you, or what more?
Wow. First of all, I don't think anyone has ever asked me a question like that before. You think you've lived with yourself, for so long, and you get confronted with questions that sort of throw you off. I would say that Vahyala is the culmination of so many factors, of anxieties, of challenges, of vulnerability, of certainty in finding my expression. Your viewers can see that I have like 3 piercings. My political views are, for the average Nigerian, quite out there. And it was because I took time. This was not necessarily a conscious decision, but as the days progressed, as I read more, as I spoke with individuals, I was able to see that there's a self waiting to be discovered. And in a world of men who are about the machismo, in a world of humans that do not want to, or in a world of humans that feel powerful when they are shown to not care. Yes. It's odd to find someone who's willing to go and do the opposite. And I think I found my sense of self in being that kind of person, in finding strength in the very places that people thought were weaknesses. And I think, this is not to sound proud, but that probably is what differentiates me from a lot of people. So I guess that is part of who Vahyala is. There's still the masculine side, of course, but it's not performative, which I feel, apologies to the men out there, that's kind of what a lot of machismo is about. It's more about a performance and less about an expression of the self.
Sure. I'm not going to mention him as well. I was having a conversation with someone that and he said, if I tell you the person, you'll probably be shocked. Vahyala is obvious. Vahyala was raised with love.
Wow.
Because when you see people that grew up with love, you can tell. And I agreed. But then I think it is very easy to just believe that is everything about this person. I feel like there's always a story. Nowadays, people go, I had trauma. Oh, what's your trauma? You state it. And because it is not my version of deep, there are some persons that are still battling healing, but they can't say it because they feel like, it's not that. I can't put it out there because there's some persons that are talking about sexual abuse.
Yeah.
Right? But I feel like some of the trauma experience I had weren't that deep to some persons, but it's affected some part of my adult life. So I feel like when I see people like yourself, I feel like that's not all there is to the story. I feel like there's still something that made Viola who he is, and we want to hear.
I like the perspective you took. For psychologists, they say that human beings are basically like icebergs. You just basically see 10% of an entire human. The the story that you related is interesting because yes, I was raised in an atmosphere of openness, and I can say for a fact that my parents listened to us, and not to overstate it, but a lot of children are not heard.
Yes.
A lot of children are just seen, especially in the African context.
True.
And they are not heard. And I think, for what it's worth, to a very large extent, my parents listened to us.
Wow.
Now, let's peel a bit of that away. For a very long time, I generally did not like my father.
Okay. Wow.
I remember growing up, and I remember I think I was in the second grade. Then we were, outside Nigeria, and this kid used to kind of like bully me and stuff. And there was a day like he punches me in my stomach, like a sucker punch, and it knocks the wind out of me, and I like probably fall down or something, and he laughs and he goes away. So I come to tell my parents, and my dad is like, "Why didn't you punch him back? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that?" And I think that's like the first memory I have of like disappointing him. And I felt, now that I think back, there's probably a lot that I may have suppressed or repressed or forgotten. But growing up as a child, I generally felt like he didn't like me enough, And then coupled with the fact that when it came to quantitative reasoning, mathematics, and all that, it was never my strong suit. And my dad was basically doing his PhD in sciences at that time. So I was his first boy. So he wanted, this kid should be good at math, he should have the aptitude. I'm coming from deprivation. My dad, surmounted a lot of challenges. He was the last child of 8. 6 had died. Wow. He was the last child of, I think, the second or third wife. Wow. So he basically had no relationship with his father. So I guess there was a part of him that didn't want to do that, but was unsure how to balance being an immigrant while doing your PhD, initially having some marital issues, at the onset of their marriage in the late 80s. So that may have been the reason why growing up as a prepubescent, then into my adolescence, I wasn't particularly sure. Fast forward, I'm leaving a lot of things out. To when I become an adult, I realized that I could be friends with this man. For my mother, the relationship had been much different. She was always very supportive. She was always very open. She was encouraging in her own way. I guess she felt frustrated that this kid is always so anxious and unsure of himself. What's the problem? And quite recently, I was telling my wife about this. She was telling me, as my mother was telling me, that growing up with her mother was super hard on her. And it kind of started to make sense that, okay, maybe this is why my mother was so short with me, because she hadn't also really processed her own upbringing. So, having passed all that to my late teens, early adulthood, I realized that for me to be a better person, I needed to look past the hurts and accept the positive investments that my parents made with the information and knowledge and expectations that they had of me at the time. So I guess that's really what kind of made me who I am today.
Amazing. Which further buttresses the point that some of the traumas that we remember, right, are not just the abuse. It can also stem for, like, there's a case of bullying, which is terrific. From what you've said, still you turned out to be this person, right? So these challenges, did they in any way affect or shape any part of your adult life, a misconception can come up that there are times you do something and you don't understand why. But there are times you react to something and you don't understand why, right? And because maybe the experience you've forgotten, you moved on because it wasn't that.
But it ended up becoming like a repressed memory.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So, in your case, do you think that do you have any memory of it affecting any part of your adult life? Yeah.
I think I do. I mean, for one, I'm still kind of an anxious person.
Oh, wow.
And but for me, okay, let me just backtrack. There were huge expectations placed on me as the first child, and you have a father who is basically brilliant at whatever he does. My dad played sports. My dad used to write articles and letters that appeared in like Newsweek and international magazines and local newspapers. Then he was going to publish a book, so he probably, at the very least, wanted his son to be something like that.
Yeah.
So he expected to see certain signs in this boy, which I guess he really didn't. Maybe I was a slow learner, I don't know.
Or maybe you were just better at something else.
Possibly.
Which is true.
Which is true.
Senior philosopher.
Right?
Sorry, I have to put that.
Yeah, no, but I'll probably even come to that at some point. So, it's even possible that may have been why I spent a lot of time in my head, because I needed to constantly question or reassure myself depending on the situation. And then, coming back to Nigeria, attending school, and I'm confronted with a high performance culture where students want to come first. For a very long time, I didn't know that there was anything like first.
Yeah.
Because I'm coming from the North American culture that focuses on individual child development. It does, but it's not about you came first, you came last.
Okay.
So for years I never really even knew what that meant.
Right.
So it then pushed me to at least try to focus on the strengths that I had, which were the arts, the humanities courses, and that led me to do a lot of reading. That led me to, like I said, spend a lot of time in my head, and reading fiction really, really helped my sense of expression and articulation. And I think to a very large extent, though ironically I can't remember when last I read fiction, it did have a very, very profound effect on my expression and even my love for the arts as a human endeavor, in the sense of music, film, writing, spoken word drama, and all that. And I guess to some extent deeper aspects of the arts, like the core courses: sociology, philosophy, ethics, and psychology. So, going back to your question, I think I've deviated a lot. Yes, the anxiety did make me at one time kind of like a timid person, because I would be worried that, am I offending this person?
Wow.
Because you grow up in a situation where your dad is basically frowning at you all day. You're never able to measure up to what his expectation for you is. And then you carry that baggage with you in your dealings with people, and you try to tiptoe around people and not to offend them and not to make them angry. And it took a lot for me to move past that. I mean, I'm still as civil as possible, but when push comes to shove, I will tell you, okay, this is this, and to hell with how you feel, because if you've gotten me to that point, I've given you a lot of excuses. So I am justified. I have to justify my anger. I think I'll put it that way. This is actually the first time I'm confronting that. I always have to justify my anger to myself before I express it, or before it even comes out. I have argued and poked holes in it, and so that's something that I think still happens till today, which a lot of people may mistake for me being non-confrontational.
Okay.
I guess it's true in some sense, because I want to be very sure that I'm reacting in a reasonable way. So yeah, I think those are the things. That's one particular thing that has stuck with me, for quite some time.
Amazing. For me, who is hashtag confrontational, I think I am seeing like I'm having insights into what goes on into the heads of when you meet someone, you feel like they're not confrontational. If you felt this way, why
Yes.
don't you just? This is the first time I think I'm having like real deep insight into how
Yes,
you think.
perspective.
Well, I think it's amazing. Funny enough, I wish I could stop to think sometimes before going off like.
It has its disadvantages because, I mean, I'm sorry for interrupting you, but like my wife is someone who is, I mean, it's coming out. Like it's just coming out. She's not even thinking it out. So if you step on her toes, she will tell you immediately.
Yes.
I would be like,
I mean, I can concur with her.
Well, they say women tend to. Sorry, that's not a sexist comment.
I don't think women do though.
I think women are. How will I put
I think
this?
I have a lot of women in my life who are not confrontational.
Really?
I think of all the women in my life, right, that I've come across, I think Topsy and myself are the only confrontational people. I think every other woman I know. So for me, right, I think because of where I'm coming from, when I see a person that is non-confrontational, I just don't understand. That's why I think I'm grateful to your explanation right now because it now gives me insight. And I'm
Yes.
like, just say it. If you're not okay with that, how do I know I'm hurting if you're not
Yes.
saying it? So for me, I would rather
Yes, get it out.
yes,
Yeah.
I would feel headache sometimes.
Shoot first, ask questions later.
Please go on. I'd like to hear more of this.
Yeah. It's like I said, you are bringing sides out in me that I actually have not confronted. And so maybe why I said that is a lot of the women I know, maybe I perceive them as being forthright or as being at least candid enough. I think I probably know far more candid, frank, forthright women than I know women that are not like that.
Okay.
That might be opposites attract, kind of thing.
Yes.
You tend to be attracted to people who have things that you don't.
Yes.
Then again, it may be confirmation bias. Maybe I am, because I've always seen my mother as someone who is forthright.
Okay.
She's very polite. In fact, my entire civility was learned in no small measure from my parents.
Wow.
Literally from the way they treated people. Like I learned honesty and integrity from those people. I might get into that later, but maybe that's why I tend to see that side in women more, and I see men as tending to be indifferent. So it's not that men are not aggressive, which they are, but maybe I tend to see more of indifference from men and more of articulation and forthrightness, which Nigerian men will call women talk too much. I think that is their misinterpretation of women who want to be heard, women who want to be seen, and want to contribute to a conversation.
Yes. Wow. So that's why you should have conversations with intelligent people. Because sorry, I had to throw that shit.
You flatter me.
No, but really, like so you know how you have this question right in your head, but you've never found like proper explanation for it. How people put it out there, like, oh, this is how it is, but you've never really had someone address it and it makes sense. Like I think I understand better where non-confrontational people are coming from, and how. So let's move on to the next. From what you're talking, I mean, you took us to women and all of that. All right, so I'm just going to ask a question from that line of thought. What is your perspective on relationships support as it concerns trauma? Do you talk about it because people see it as, oh, I'm putting burden on this person, or this person starts seeing me as a baggage, right? But in your books, what do you think, right?
It's very, very serious stuff. And I have to also commend you. It's one thing to have a brilliant guest, but it's another thing to actually formulate questions that are hard hitting, that make your guests confront things that they may have not in the past. So, how do you not be a burden? I approach relationships with an acknowledgement, an acknowledgement that, and this is for both, the relationship I have with my wife and my friends. You are there to play a role. You are there to lighten a load. You are there to lighten a burden. You are there to be a friend in the sense of the word. So it is a given that you will have a friend, that you have a partner that would want to share some of their childhood traumas and experiences with you. Before I get to my relationship with my significant other, I have a childhood friend who, we are, men well into our ages, who opened up to me recently. And this is a man, a handsome man, cool by all definitions. I remember when we were in secondary school, he was like the fine boy, girls loved him. And, he talks to me at some point last year and literally breaks down in tears and tells me he never felt wanted, he never felt loved. And of course, it blew my mind, but I was glad that he was able to open up to me, because I understood that that's what you do for a friend. You listen to their hurts, you listen to their fears. If you can sense that they want advice or suggestions, you give them. If they just want to listen, you listen. And for those who just want to have a drink in silence, I'm your guy. So coming to my my relationship with my wife, knowing that we'll come with our burdens is a given, and I will always be the person that is willing to listen, because I said earlier that children in this part of the world are to be seen, not heard. Most times they're not even to be seen. So a lot of us as Nigerian young people, we never really grew up with parents listening to us. We never spoke to adults and were spoken back to. We were talked down to. So you are always being talked down to. Don't do this. Do this. Think like this. Don't do that. Don't wear that shoe. Go to your room. Keep quiet. People are talking and talking. So you've never really been able to express yourself. And a lot of the experiences, a lot of the challenges, the hurts, the anxieties have been sort of just floating around somewhere in your subconscious. And personally, I feel, and I say this with all sense of responsibility, I take it as an honor in some way to have someone open up to me, because it means that they've gotten to that point where they can be vulnerable with you. And this is what a lot of us are avoiding these days. The whole I don't need anybody. That is patently false. Because humans are social beings. Our language evolved because human beings like to complain. Apart from talking about where a lion is and where there are ripe berries on a tree, human language evolved through complaining. Oh, the river washed away my cousin the other day. Things like that. So it's there will be a learning process. There will be a decoupling, will I say, where your partner is able to share those things. The fact that they share them with you that day doesn't mean that they're gone, because they've lived with those things for a greater part of 2 to 3 decades. And it's not going to go away overnight. More so, unfortunately, those are things that are part of their sense of self. So you are, and this is not a trivial statement. This is why oftentimes when we have like arguments on social media or even in face to face, when you disagree with people, Nigerians say, "Why are you fighting? Why are you fighting with me?" Because people see their views and opinions as themselves, representations of their reality, representations of their experiences, representations of their context, representations of their being. So it's very difficult for people to be like, you know what, I disagree with you in this, but because I understand that this is not an attack on the self, it's an attack on a view that is part of 1,000 parts of me. I can move on. So the baggage will be there, and I hope and I yearn that I'm strong enough to be patient, because hey, I'm coming with my own baggage as well, and there are hurts anxieties, fears that may even come up unexpectedly,
Mm-hmm.
that I might not truly understand until they're told back to me by someone else.
Mm.
So that's my perspective on the burdens and the emotional baggage. In summary, being there for the person, empathizing with the person, as you said about me earlier.
Which is your great strength.
I feel like $1,000,000, and understanding that people deal with these things differently, and you aren't any different from them as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, I feel like I just entered a therapy session.
I'm flattered again.
Yeah, because there are some things you said that really struck a chord. First is, and I'm speaking from a trauma survivor's perspective. The first is when you have someone who calls you, um, if they want a solution, if they want you to just be there, or if they just want to drink in silence, if they want you to just listen, yes, that I feel like it's something that is missing a lot these days. There's another thing you said so that I don't forget. The fact that your partner has opened up about a baggage doesn't mean it has left. It is still there. They've just, in fact, I think it's going to get worse because now they know they can be vulnerable around
Exactly.
you. So
Exactly.
it's going to probably be for a period of time more of crying, more of getting angry. Oh, this is this is my trigger. You know, it's amazing that and I say this with all sense of honesty because I've spoken to a lot of people that are not supposed. I mean, you have your trauma that you're dealing with, but like you sound like someone who has, what it means to be there for someone. You know what it means to support someone who is going through it, right? And a number of times, I get there's someone I was talking to and she was like, my husband said, this is your trauma every day, trauma every day. When are you going to, so what you just said just hits, like this person has been with us for 10 years,
Their entire life.
Before you came in for 3 years.
Yes.
It's not going to be magical and just disappear. And I think the world would be a better place if everyone understood this. I mean, not everyone can, but if you have like a friend, a partner, someone who's going through it would be nice if you understood it. That sometimes these people are calling or reaching out for support.
Sometimes they're not always calling for money or Nigeria people. Sometimes we just want to talk. Sorry.
Sorry, guys. Okay, so it's just to talk, not for money. Guys, this is funny.
Because every time we see a call on a phone, this one wants out for money.
So it's just sometimes it's just to listen.
Yeah.
And that thing is, I think I was listening to Apostle Femi Lazarus. I don't know if you guys are.
Yeah, I think I see clips of him on social media.
He was saying something. I like that guy because he's an aware pastor, right? He's someone that doesn't talk from. He teaches.
Yeah.
Like he's someone who has been there, done this, done that. So when he says something, you can hear the experience in it. He said something that sometimes when we're talking about forthright women, so for him, we were talking about women, but I think it's general, right? When a woman is saying da 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 da, 9 out of 10 times they already have the solution. They just want to know that you're listening.
Yeah.
Right? So, and I think it's a mistake that a lot of us make. Someone is talking, you've not, I think I might be guilty of that. You don't even know where they're coming from.
Yes.
You don't know if they just want to onboarding.
Vent or yeah.
The next thing you're saying, I think you should do this. I think, we talk to philosophers and advisors and then stop talking to the person. This person now you've cut the person short. You've not heard them out, right? And now they will leave that conversation not feeling okay, despite the solutions you've proposed.
Yes.
Because they not aired it out totally.
Yes.
So I feel when you're supporting, when you have someone who is going through it and you have to support them, understand where they're coming from. Is this solution you want? I'm not saying you should ask them that, but if you're kind enough to listen through the first 10 minutes, I'm very sure you understand what they want.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Right?
agree.
And that's something that just hit me from your explanation. I asked this question to Topsy when she was here, and I would like to
Want to hear
ask
my
you
version?
if your child wakes up today, right, and says, "Daddy, I'm not taking this. I'm not doing this. I want to be this. I'm not. I'm not. I'm going to be a Christian, or I want to be a pastor. I don't want to be a doctor." What is, or let's not even take that angle. Or daddy, I am. What's the most controversial thing I can?
Daddy, I'm gay.
Okay, daddy, I'm gay. What? Or daddy, I'm. Maybe there's a different version of atheist. I just feel like the world is evolving, so a lot of things can come up. So daddy, I'm that senior brother of atheist, and this is my views.
Yeah.
Aliens are pastors, and the world is flat. Whatever.
Okay, now that's kind of extreme. I think we can disprove that in a single snap, but all jokes aside.
Okay, so
First one, if my child tells me that they're homosexual, honestly, I would encourage them to just leave the country. If we are still in Nigeria at that time,
yeah,
because
it's going to be a tough spot.
yeah, I don't see Nigerians as being able to look past a person's sexuality, even though it is irrelevant for 99% of public life. I have my reservations with the law as an instrument of social control, and how the law discriminates against homosexuals. But I guess that might not be a conversation for today. So my wife says something when we talk about things like this, and maybe I should preface this statement with: children are not mini versions of you.
Oh, she said that as well.
Okay, that's one thing we agree on. And you hear people say things. Oh, I had a mini me. No, that child is a child.
Just looks like you.
It just looks like you. They were fortunate to have genes and all that. I was watching a video I shared with my wife a couple of days ago on a child psychologist who said that children are inheriting over 400 personality traits.
Wow.
From different aspects of your lineage. So apart from the phenotypical, the phenotype, the genotype is completely different. So I have this understanding that a child is an individual, is their own person, that in the first 10 years, I guess, would need some shepherding from you.
Yeah.
But after that, your input into the child's development and growth is negligent. And these are not my words. These are words of a child psychologist. So, I will understand that this child has perhaps come to a conclusion after having viewed certain things. So I have this step-by-step approach. It would depend on the child's age. If the child is like 16 and they say, oh, they want to be a pastor, I'll be like, slow down, kid. Maybe when you're 21, you can make that decision. But since you're still living with me and I still have guardianship and authority over you, I would want you to finish school or something. It would be different if the child is like in their early 20s, maybe staying on their own. Then there's very little I could do. But I like the fact that you introduced different types of disagreement in quote or difference. So them wanting to be religious is perfectly fine by me. I arrived at my decision to be irreligious not because anyone convinced me, or because I thought through it myself. And if they arrived at that conclusion themselves, that's fine. I have no problems with religion. In fact, I try to advise my religious friends to be the best person they can be, because they are representatives of that religion. So whether you want to be a Muslim, a Christian, a Buddhist, is really okay by me. If they want to go into the performing arts, man, I'll tell them that stuff is not easy. the Burna Boys that you see, the Wizkids
So
that
you
you
and
see.
your wife are just using the same example.
Yeah, I mean,
Extension of each other.
I will watch that episode. I tell myself these things because when you ask Nigerians, okay, so I've had this interaction with Nigerians on social media, and a lot of people genuinely believe that the successful people they see in real life worked hard. And I can tell you that 70% of their success was connections,
Sure.
was luck, was them being there just at the right time.
Yeah.
And a whole lot of other factors that we cannot see.
Yeah.
So for every Burna Boy, every Wizkid, every Davido you see, there are literally thousands of people that can sing better, that can write better, that are more talented, but they haven't just been able to break out into it. So I will tell this kid,
And there are some that won't break out.
they will never break out.
Yes.
And as Nigerians say, it's not a curse.
Yeah,
It's just saying reality.
Yes.
Yes.
True.
So I'll tell the child that these are the things that you will face. But if you decide to do it, I will support you 100%. As long as you're happy and you're not hurting anyone.
Yes.
I'll draw the line at hurt, murder and all that.
Do you think sharing your trauma experience with your partner is crucial or critical to building a strong foundation for your relationship?
Without a hesitation, yes. Why I say so is, I guess you could say I have a sentimental view of what a marriage or what a relationship should be. There's an output, there is a product of good relationships that transcends. Your viewers might say I'm getting spiritual. that transcends the physical as we know it. There is a quality of life that you can create literally in a relationship, because relationships have one thing social sciences call emergent properties. That's a property of a thing when it is combined with other things that you cannot create with one component on its own. So I guess the best example one could give is like a car's complete engine. With that complete engine, you have movement, you have force, but the components of the engine, the carburetor, the battery, the gasket, on their own cannot produce force. But that's the emergent property of the components of a car's engine. And relationships have emergent properties that they literally help you become a better person. That's putting it in as discrete terms as possible. And I suppose it also comes from the understanding that friendships are crucial aspects of human existence.
Sure.
This may sound like a platitude, but friendships are truly underrated things.
Sure.
It took me a very long time to say that I could have a best friend. My wife used to tease me and say that, this person is your best friend. I'm like, no, I don't have any best friends. Because it was tough for me to accept that I could have someone that I cherish that much.
Yeah.
So that's the perspective I'm coming with. And a marriage is more than a friendship to me. A marriage comes with much more responsibilities and demands that need to be accepted. Now, I will have to put a caveat by saying marriages are not perfect institutions, because if they were, people wouldn't get divorces.
Sure.
But because you are coming with that imperfection and you know it, but you want and expect to be better for yourself and be better for your partner and want the same for your partner, you're coming to this union with the understanding that, as painful, as upsetting, as frustrating as it might sound or it might become in this person expressing themselves, you are remembering that they are a culmination of experiences. They haven't been with you. They are probably getting to a point where they are comfortable. And so many other factors that you have to acknowledge and comprehend and accept for you to get to that point where this person is able to tell you these things, and hopefully, because the ultimate goal is for them to get past those things and be a better person for it. So yes, again, in summary, it's absolutely necessary for persons in a marriage, in a sexual relationship, and even in a platonic relationship, as friends to share that package.
I think this was another thing you had said before that I was trying to remember and I didn't remember, and you just said it again. And which is why I'm applauding, because in a world where I honestly don't care about people,
And it's cool to be sendless.
yeah, I don't need anybody.
Yes.
In a world where people think that way, to have someone of your orientation is a breath of fresh air,
Thank you.
because we actually need each
We
other.
absolutely need each other.
I can't do it by myself. You can't do it by yourself. Nobody in this life, even Dangote, cannot survive on his own.
He literally could not have been Dangote without,
even Zuckerberg
Yes.
had
yes.
to go to his friends and say, guys, I have this amazing idea. I think we should, and the ones that agreed worked with him.
The ones that didn't.
We have Meta.
Yeah.
So bottom line is, it's a breath of fresh air to have conversations with you and see your perspective on things like this. And I hope that people can see this and draw inspiration from it. It is okay to be vulnerable. It is very okay to rely on people. It is also very okay to send people.
Yes.
And it's something I think I'm learning from you. I want to learn from you. I'm consciously telling myself I need to learn from you, because growing up, I think I can say for myself that because of the kind of persons or adults I had around me growing up, I used to be very empathetic to a fault. That even when send me, I want to send you. So I got to a point where I had to consciously tell myself, like, well, if you don't send me, I don't send you.
Yeah. Draw that line.
I don't send you too. But I think at some point it became poisonous, in that I started extending it. Like, really, even if I don't know you, I can't send you because I don't know you. But it's something I think I've observed from you. It doesn't matter if you're meeting someone for the first time, right? I think what I see is you easily put yourself in people's shoes, and there was a live example. I don't want to go into details because some persons might know who I'm talking about, right? But I think our last meetup, I saw it, and I was telling my partner, I was like, that's something I like vibe for. He would, even
in my state,
in your
my shy used. You need to be able to laugh at yourself, people.
Oh my god, yes. His I wish I have videos. I'm
glad she does that.
He's offering me even in your state.
Yes.
Whenever I say that, I get off because I see
you live the
But no, right, like even at that point, you were still, caring.
Yeah.
And it's amazing, I tell you.
I will say, sorry for interrupting you. I will say that you can get it wrong, and I do get it wrong. You can empathize to the point where it's excessive, like you said you did.
Yes.
And you can not emphasize that it becomes toxic. We need to accept as human beings that we are works in progress.
Sure.
And like you said, you have understood. So that implies that you reevaluate yourself, which I have to applaud you for doing.
Thank
Something
you.
that a lot of people simply do not do, because you think you've arrived emotionally.
True.
And you don't need to do any other work. All of us should have that work in progress big ass sign on our necks as we walk around. So I think we can be a little kinder to each other as we go, forward.
When you were talking, you spoke about your anxiety issues and your fear for
like offending
subject.
people. Yeah. Okay, no, mathematics.
Mathematics. You think the bullying, the response to your fear for maths, contributed to that? And what would be your advice to parents as it concerns supporting your children, when you notice that there's a lack in certain areas, like fear for certain subjects? Basically, what should parents do differently to ensure that children are less don't go with antisocials.
Okay, so the first part of your question, to a large extent, I'm sure it did. My experiences with numbers, and I was chatting with a friend on X, formerly Twitter. He's in the UK. He's has a PhD, I think, in political science. And we're talking about our childhood experiences, and he said, "Oh, he hated math as a kid." I was like, "Wow, me too." He said, and he was terrible at it. I said, "Wow, me too." And then he tells me that. So when I got to the UK, I was still curious as to why I was, and he found out that there's a name for it. It's not dyslexia, but there's a name for it when you. And the way he described it is exactly my experience. At some point, I thought I had a learning disability.
Wow.
It was that bad, and I guess I still do in some way struggle with it, but it's certainly not as bad as it was before, because I realized that one thing I wasn't doing was practicing. I thought mathematics was like English or social studies or biology, where you could just read and use your imagination and understand. I never really appreciated that it required you to understand like the principles and know the formulas.
Practicals.
Yes, for you to be able to do it in practice. So I think that affected my drive or my inclination to the arts. Of course, philosophy has always been something I've loved. Literature writing, so I naturally gravitated to the social sciences. I studied law. I mean, I wanted to even study international relations, but I ended up studying law, so it did affect me. And I guess my current career, fortunately, I'm finding my way back. Yes, because I'm doing statistics, which has actually been a breeze. So the second part of your question, what can parents do? It's a balancing act, because school as we know it is effectively places children in a competitive like arena, where I guess school in this part of the world, where they are put under pressure to be first in their class, and you're not doing well in maths. See your friend, he had A. Does he have two heads? I mean, genetic mutations aside, he may have two heads, but that's for another day. But but yes, and because we have different aptitudes and we have different capacities, children are going to learn at different rates. I was speaking to a friend of mine who stays in the US, and he was telling me about his children, and he said his daughter was brilliant, barely needed any extra tutors and guidance, but his son had it very difficult. And it was they found out that their son was actually dyslexic. But they're in the US, so it's a bit easy for them to still put him through school. I can't imagine what dyslexic children in Nigeria are going through. They are probably literally being beaten every day.
Yes.
And my heart goes out to them.
Yeah.
But I want to appeal to parents to have this idea in their mind that you are better off giving your child, you're better off understanding your child than doing the tried and true in quote method of screaming or shouting or beating or threats. Because if you have the potential of your child being better adjusted if you take a different approach, and your child probably being maladjusted if you take the regular approach, you're better off taking the unconventional approach and getting them the extra support they need, understanding the problem. It may be dyslexia. It may be a learning disability. It may be anxiety. It may be that they're just not ready mentally. It could be so many things. So parents need to invest more in understanding where their children are coming from and being able to support their children when they find out where they are, to support them to go further. It's been I've had this, like I've said earlier in the conversation, parents who listened, and I have clear memories of engaging in conversations with my parents. I have clear memories of my parents explaining things that were probably controversial to the average Nigerian household. Like my mother explained the Big Bang to me when I was in primary 3. My dad explained evolution to me when I was probably in primary 6 or something. He told me of how Christians were going around killing people that said the world was round. So I was like, oh, so Christians can be the bad guys, and that sort of shaped my mind into understanding that the world is not always black and white. It's gray, it's interesting. Science can be a very fun way of understanding that world. And then, of course, growing up, being a reader and moving from literature and reading for pleasure to philosophy and social science, psychology, ethics, and understanding that there are ways of viewing the world that may not conform to your orientation. One of my first memories of disagreeing with church ideology was when my pastor then said, if you do not marry under Christ, your marriage will not last. Something to that effect. And I was like, but there are like a billion Hindus that worship Vishnu and Kali and Shiva and Ganesh, elephant gods and gods with six hands. And they probably have a lower divorce rate than marriages in the US. So that kind of contradicts, what this man of God said. And again, like I said, I had a family that at least was able to listen to, our views that differed from my parents' politics. Growing up, in North America, my parents had homosexual friends. So those things weren't really seen as bizarre to me. And, I say this as a boast, which I know a lot of Nigerians will find strange, but I've never been homophobic because it's never really been an issue for me. I see it just as the way I see, different sex love. So those are parts of the things that contributed to me having a relatively liberal worldview. Fast forward to sometime in 2012, yes, no, 2011, I started listening to a lot of Christian apologists. These are people who call themselves philosophers and want to defend the faith using reason and logic. And that took me down a path where I started reading the Bible and trying to become an apologist myself. Fast forward a few years later, and I stumbled across this group on Facebook called Does God Exist? And it was like a community of believers, of skeptics, of agnostics, of atheists. And we used to have a lot of arguments about claims made by religious people. The person who managed the group was actually a Christian woman. And me, armed with my knowledge of Christian apologetics, I was like, how deal with these atheists? Before then, I never really knew the atheists existed. I think my first encounter with an atheist was I think it was either an Economist magazine or a Newsweek magazine or a Time magazine that had a feature story on Pastor Rick Warren. I'm sure you know of him, the guy who wrote The Purpose-Driven Life. I love that book. So I was like, Rick Warren, I know Rick Warren. And Sam Harris, who is a popular, I think he's a neuroscientist and, of course, a skeptic. He's written several books. I think one of them was called The End of Faith, if I'm not mistaken. And, they were having a conversation. I was like, wow, so these people actually exist. Then fast forward to 2015, yeah. And, I would argue with these guys, and they would just come with counter after counter. Is it biology? Is it physics? Is it logic? Is it ethics? Is it history? Is it endocrinology? All the things I thought were immutable truths bestowed by, a deity through his men of God, I realized had holes upon holes. And I started asking myself, can you live with these contradictions? And for a lot of people, why they choose to leave the faith is intellectual honesty. A lot of Nigerians, a lot of people generally, and in their defense, atheists and skeptics can come off as arrogant. I think that in a nutshell kind of summarizes my view on skepticism, on my lack of belief, on the positions I hold, even with contemporary trending issues. So, like, they say, oh, so how was the world created? Our religious book says it was done like this, like this. Does science know? And I'm like, science doesn't have an answer, but we have our best guess. And 300, 400 years ago, we didn't really know how lightning was formed. We thought it was the gods. Today we know better. Maybe 1,000 years ago, we thought diseases were caused by evil spirits. Today we know that they're caused by microorganisms, and all that. So that plays a huge role in my skepticism in general, and I apply that skepticism not just to religious claims, but to all kinds of claims, even scientific claims. And I will end by saying science, going by the, sorry to go academic, the hypothetical deductive model of post-positivist thinking, Karl Popper's theory of evidence, and his theory of the scientific method. Science advances by making provisional claims that can be debunked in the future. Okay, so based on 10 tests, 9 failed, so there's a likelihood that this is the case. There's a likelihood. We have reasons to conclude that if tomorrow we find out that that test was wrong, we start again. And that's how science goes, from step to step, making those small tweaks here and there in the framework of knowledge as we know it. There's a whole conversation behind that, but that's where I'll stop.
There's one thing I'm going to put, as much as this is not a it's not a religious
debate.
Yes. So I'm not even going to do religious debates, because why I say this is the reason why I say I would not indulge in a religious debate is what I understand as a Christian is there are things that I have seen live happening to me or someone around me that I cannot explain. If I were to go into a debate with a deep thinker, chances are that I would come out failing. Yes, because I can't explain it.
But it's not about winning.
Yeah. No, I mean, yes, it's not about winning, but like I can't argue with you. I don't have the facts. I only have the proof that this thing happened. Right? Before we came on air, I told you that something happened.
Yeah.
Which I'm going to, behind the scenes, we're going to talk about that. But
so you guys don't hear that.
It's not for everybody. So the truth is, there are things that will happen that I can't explain. So how am I going to argue? Right? I've experienced miracle. How am I going to argue it with you that this is? Do you get? And I think one major thing I'm going to put out there is I understand, like now I even can understand why you take this stance, because you're a deep thinker, you are very analytical. Christianity and deep thinking don't mix. That's the truth. Like if you're going to question everything, I promise you, if I'm to put down my life story to you, and I think for like a period you will probably lose sleep trying to figure it out.
Wow.
Yes, because there are a lot of things that have happened, that I can't explain it. I don't have an explanation, and in my head it can only be God, because I can't explain it. There is nothing that I worked on. I can't explain it basically. So it can only be my God, right? So if I were to sit and start downloading you with those stories, with those happenings, with those miracles, as we Christians will call it, you as a deep thinker, I'm very sure that you'll be like, I'll be right back.
No, I actually did admit that there are things that we don't understand.
Yes.
And science doesn't understand everything.
Yes.
But I think it's the conclusions we eventually get to that show the difference. Religious people will say, it must be this.
Yes.
The skeptic will say, I don't know, but I want to find the answer.
Yes. I get that. So anyway, this is not a religious debate. So thank you for that answer. That hyper-deductive, what did you call it?
Hypothetical deductive reasoning.
Okay. What was it?
So it's a method of coming up with hypotheses about claims.
Okay.
So you say I've boiled water, and at some temperature it became a gas. My hypothesis is that the heat is a reason why the water became gas.
Okay.
Let's say I boil it tomorrow and the water turns to ice. My hypothesis is refuted.
Okay.
And the null hypothesis of the heat has no effect on water becoming vapor,
Okay.
would be true.
Okay.
And in that case, it was confirmed to be true that the heat had no effect because the next day when I boiled it, it turned to ice. So that's the hypothetical deductive.
Okay.
So you make hypotheses and deduce from tests or results what claim to make provisionally.
Okay.
The claim can change tomorrow because the experiment can give you different results. Yes. I hope that's I think I'm understanding it more today.
Yeah. You talked about bully, right? Bully is a big thing in Africa, in Nigeria. Let me use Nigeria. And why it is crazy, right, is most times the bullying happens from adults in this our Nigeria.
Yeah.
Right. So have you in your adult life or whilst growing up, also when you moved to Nigeria, had that experience, with adults? Or have you ever had any experience that probably affected you said something about sense of self, and have you ever had any experience that affected your sense of self or your worth or made you question, like yourself, like, okay, should I?
Yeah, I had. So after returning to Nigeria in the mid 90s, I mean, if you look at me, I'm kind of like a skinny guy. I used to be way skinnier than this.
Wow.
In fact, my roommate in university said I had a wasp's waist. I mean, I was made fun of. No, you can laugh. At least I can laugh about it now. It was traumatic.
What was this a Nigerian person that said that?
Oh yeah. I was an adult, so it was actually funny to me, because at that time I had gotten to a point where I was comfortable with myself. Yeah. But growing up, primary school, secondary school, I was made fun of constantly.
Wow.
My weight, my size, my scrawny nature, and at that time I'd gotten to the point where I was comfortable in myself, in my skin as an individual. But it wasn't always that way. I remember coming back, when we came back in the mid 90s, to school in Nigeria. And it's now that Nigerians are sort of a bit more health conscious. It may be due to the global trend of recognizing that obesity is a problem even in Africa, that we are trying to move away to more healthy physiques. But for a very long time, I'm sure even up to 5 years ago, it was a compliment to tell someone, you've added.
Sure.
Now people will take a step back. Should I say that to this person? Let the person not think I'm fat shaming them, something.
Yeah.
Which I think is in some way is good. So, I had that trauma and it really affected my sense of appreciation of myself as a man, as a young boy, as a person that could be desired. I tell my wife that one thing that is fairly constant in humans is the what I call it, the trait of wanting to be desired. Desirability. Yeah. Everybody wants to be desired. Men want to be desired, women want to be desired, and that's why we do a lot of the things we do. So it affected, my sense of self for quite some time. And I remember a day I wanted to go out, and I mean, in secondary school, you have your close group of friends that are constantly like yabbing you, and they used to yab me a lot, and they used to get to me, but of course I would have to form like it wasn't getting to me. And I told this my family friend who was staying with us then that I wanted to wear shorts. I was like, but my friends will make fun of me. And then he said, and so what? I said, he said, will that stop you from doing anything? Will that stop you from being who you are, being the funny person, being the nice person, being the kind person, being the intelligent person? And he said, if it won't stop any of those things, why do you have to listen to what they will say about you? And that was like, a light bulb moment for me. And from that moment on, I started wearing shorts, as part of my wardrobe, when I was in...
You do wear shorts a lot.
Oh, but trust me, the ones I wear now are even quite provocative. Then I just started. Now I'm an extremist, but my wife complains that no more shower shorts. She said, you're not an ashawo, so why are you wearing shower shorts? That's just a joke, by the way.
I like it. What's the picture?
Yeah, so that was like a turning point for me, and moving past that point, I could tell people who had the inclination to want to be controlling or bossy, and I would just stay away from you. Once I meet you and I see that you have those tendencies, unless I have to be in the same room you are, like a colleague, of course I will. But if you are a friend or an acquaintance,
That I can cut off.
I'll cut you off because I cannot. I'm sorry for putting this crudely. Waste my energy, on a person like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like it. I subscribe. Yeah, that's yeah, I'm a big fan of, I always say it's like know your worth and add tax.
Yes.
Define those boundaries. Like, I think I can be very radical with defining boundaries. If you're crossing it, regardless of who you are, I have a way of just excluding you from my space,
Yes.
from my mental
Neatly
health space.
slipping you out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't even neatly, like I can just
Jaggedly slip them out.
as long as you're not serving purpose for my mental health,
Yes.
I want you out because, like I say, it's always a tussle, pulling yourself out.
And life is short.
Dragging you back.
Life is short.
Life is too short.
Yeah.
Yes, and I really subscribe to that. So, lastly, what advice would you have for people? I was saying, on our last episode that when you get yourself to that point where you can talk about what, like here you are talking about how, you were bullied for your weight and all of that, and we're laughing, we're sharing a joke. You've moved on, like you've handled that part of you, and you're a different person now. Like you're not, as I would say, a slave to your past. So, what advice would you have for people that are currently still in that murky water, and they're trying to get out?
Yeah.
Some of them don't even realize that they're in that murky water. What advice do you have for people that want to navigate and come out of it and be comfortable enough to share?
Wow. So a lot of us don't realize that there's still a child somewhere inside us, and before we came on set, we were having that conversation about the inner child, and
Parenting.
it has a lot to do with childhood experiences and parenting. And I will tell people to, like you said, evaluate yourself. Just take a day out to sit down and unpack your memories. Most likely you have repressed them, so they're probably in quote locked in there somewhere.
Sure.
But if you look at your personality and you look at the way you react to things and you think very, very expansively, you will begin to trace why you do certain things to certain ways you were treated as a child. Because those childhood experiences have a very deep and long-lasting impact, which is why, and I'm glad that I have a partner who subscribes to it. I try to be very patient with children because I see children, especially children in Nigeria, are often just talked down to, and they're never spoken to and asked questions and entertained. Someone said, and I believe this to be true. Children actually even need adult friends, that they can talk to, and the adult will talk to them like a person, not just like some toy.
Not like a child.
Yes.
Not like somebody that doesn't have feelings
Yes.
or sense of reasoning.
Exactly.
Some of them even think more than adults.
Exactly. And this should be an adult, not their peer.
Yeah.
So they can begin to develop into that, well-rounded, well-adjusted person, because these are people who are navigating through norms, institutions, customs, expectations that they have no clue exist.
Sure.
You see people, parents, you can't you greet? How do you expect this child to remember that greeting is like currency in Nigeria?
Sure.
That's maybe kind of an extreme example. So I need people to, go through their childhoods, their upbringing, and begin to trace and begin to map and navigate. Okay, why do I do this? And you need to be able to have an honest conversation with yourself. It's not pleasant. There are things that you have kept at a certain degree because you do not want to confront them. Because once you do, you feel inadequate, you feel vulnerable, you feel useless, But I need people to understand that that's what makes us human. We are imperfect. We are trying to figure out this thing called life. And I guess I'll get to that later. So, unpacking this and accepting it and understanding that it will help you be a better person. This will sound like a cliche, and I'm sure many people hate hearing it. But adversity sometimes can help you. You need friction to move. And sometimes you need to confront those harsh experiences to actually get past them. Another thing, and this is also very critical to this point, is have a community, have a friend or two that you can share these things with. Have friends that are able to understand that they have been kids as well, and they are coming with a level of grace and a level of charity that would not only help you share those things, but potentially help you improve by giving you suggestions, when you're ready to hear those suggestions. I think the third thing is to extend that same grace to people. If you are able to, unpack yourself, then you should be able to understand that a lot of the people who display to you are people who maybe haven't even really grown up. There's a particular example that I like to give, to my wife about someone, and I believe that person is still just being haunted by childhood traumas. The person is a textbook case of, someone that has not dealt with those traumas. Fourthly, I would say, please be kind to children. I think that's one of the most important things I can tell Nigerian viewers in particular. If we want to get past, the aggression in society and the impatience and the abuse, verbal and physical, we need to be kinder to children, because these guys are literally going to replace us.
Yes.
What kind of world do we want to live?
Yes. That's very scary, and it's very scary. It's deep and very scary. Because I see some parents on social media and how they are handling children, and I'm scared because what you just said. These people are literally going to be the parents of tomorrow. We need to break that cycle.
Yes.
We need to ensure that we have a saner generation. We raise a saner generation.
I like that. Raise the saner generation.
Yes, because we were healing. We should do a better job at healing.
Absolutely.
Right? So that the ones we raise don't need to start healing. All they need to start doing is taking possession.
Exactly.
I have goosebumps. Literally, I'm serious. It's been like, because this is a community, and I've put it out there that I also am a childhood trauma survivor, and sometimes from this conversation I draw inspiration. I gain new insights, to also help myself with. It's not just to help you guys, it's also to help myself, be a better person for everyone around
Yes.
me, basically.
Yes.
And for
Or
myself,
for yourself.
most
Yes.
importantly for
Yes.
myself. So this has been an amazing session. Thank you
you.
so much, Vahyala,
My pleasure.
for being here, aka Vi. Right. Thank you for being here.
By the fly guy.
I hope you've been able to draw the inspiration that I drew from this conversation. If you're currently going through it, in quotes, and you need more, or you need to have like your support network, please always reach out. And until our next episode, I love you very much, and thank you for staying tuned. Bye, guys.